So I hope this tutorial with this non-phylogenetic example has given you a sense for the goals of posterior predictive model checking, as well as the general workflow that it involves. So it's basically 3 steps. We start by fitting some model using MCMC, which you've learned in other tutorials. We then simulate posterior predictive data sets by drawing parameter values from the posterior distribution based on the MCMC. And then we compare our simulated and empirical data sets using some test statistic. And then I think there's sort of a few general take-home points that this tutorial illustrates that carry over to the phylogenetic case as well. So the general goal of posterior prediction is always to assess the absolute fit of a model to data. So it goes beyond comparing the relative fit of different available models. And it says that in an absolute sense, are the assumptions we're making reasonable for the data we've collected. There's no single correct test statistic to use for posterior prediction. Some statistics are going to be more or less sensitive to different kinds of model violations. And how best to proceed based on the results of your posterior predictive analysis really depends on what you want to know. If you're doing a study based on molecular evolution, you might design test statistics that probe different aspects of the evolutionary process. Whereas if you're interested in doing a phylogenetic analysis to get a particular estimate of the tree, the phylogenetic tree, maybe you want to use test statistics that have to do with the reliability of that inference. Now, the reason we structured this tutorial in this way, using a non-phylogenetic example, was to help understand these general take-homes. Now, these carry over to the phylogenetic case, but there's a lot of the specifics vary for the phylogenetic examples, and it can be kind of tedious to implement these things by hand in the case of a phylogenetic model. So what the developers of RevBayes have done is to actually pre-package much of this sort of workflow for phylogenetics into this thing called P3 for phylogenetic posterior prediction. And so there's 2 additional tutorials that allow you to explore how this is done in a phylogenetic case, either using test statistics that are based solely on the data, or whether using test statistics that involve inferences under the assumed model. And that distinction will become more clear as you work through those tutorials. So if you're interested in using this for your own phylogenetic analysis, I suggest you go take a look at one or both of those tutorials. And there's also a philo seminar that I gave not that long ago that talks about posterior predictive model checking in the context of phylogenetics, its importance and how we might use it and what it means for phylogenomics. So if you're interested in this topic, I'd encourage you to go check that out as well. So thanks for walking through this tutorial, and best of luck.